What's up, guys? Welcome to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at the ever so popular S&P 500 ETF SPY, ticker symbol SPY, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Wednesday, May 15th. All right, guys, so SPY here today up $2.39 a share. That's plus 0.46% in regular trading hours. Listen, guys, tomorrow is CPI. Don't forget, 1 hour before the market opens, wherever you are in the world. For me, that's 7:30 a.m. Central Time sharp. We get CPI. Now, CPI is four numbers, okay? We get headline year over year. The forecast is 3.4%. Headline month over month, 0.4%. Core year over year, 3.6%. And core month over month, the forecast is 0.3%, okay? So those are the numbers to beat. And of course, this is CPI, this is inflation, so you're looking for low numbers. Now, by the way, just a heads up, I know that, US CPI year over year, the headline year over year, that's the one that gets all the coverage. So it matters, right? Because it gets pushed throughout the media. But in reality, big picture, to really have a grasp on what's going on, guys, the Fed, which is what all this is really about, cares about core CPI year over year. That's and month over month. The two core numbers are what the Fed care about, but the one that you'll see just in general, or the two numbers that you'll see in general, usually pushed around the media, unless otherwise specified, are the headline year over year and month over month reads. Now, that's not the only number we get. At the exact same time, we get US retail sales month over month, and the forecast for that is 0.4%. Now, a few more things here just to be aware of. At noon Eastern time, 12 p.m. Eastern time, the Fed's Kashkari is speaking, and then at 3:20 p.m. Eastern time, the Fed's Bowman is expected to speak. So listen, tomorrow is a big news day, so I'm expecting volatility. So let's talk about this. We're going to take a look at the volume profile, the psychological levels, right? The institutions are watching, so we need to. Implied volatility, and we'll finish out with the expected move for tomorrow and the directional bias coming out of the chain for tomorrow. So let's start here on the 5-minute with that volume profile. Listen, again, if you're new here, SPY is a daily upload, so I greatly appreciate you subscribing to the channel. My goal here is 10,000. I'm trying to get there as quickly as we can. So I appreciate you doing so, and I will keep the SPY videos coming daily. And, by the way, while you're down there, I'm taking a poll in the comment section. I like to do this when there's something I think that I'm curious about. Of course, CPI tomorrow on SPY. I'm very curious to hear, are you guys bullish or bearish? Just, you don't even have to tell me why. If you'd like to, I'm curious to know. Let me know in the comments. So, here on the volume profile, what we're looking for here, guys, is we're kind of looking under the hood, looking for bias that exists in the volume that either supports or goes against the intraday movement. So if you pull this up here, very normal open, actually kind of slow, realistically, off the open. Okay, of course, this morning we got PPI. That left us with a little more volume at around 7:30 a.m. Central Time, 1 hour before the market opened. And we ended up opening essentially flat, just down a little bit from where we came into that read. And then it was relatively slow until we got that later day pump and then hold. So the volume itself, it was very back and forth. There really wasn't any tremendous bias for the first at least 2/3 of the day. Once we got into this move into the close, we saw bullish bias certainly there with that higher out of context, a few consecutive bars, volume to the green side. But then into the close itself, not a lot really stands out. This bar and the bar immediately following the closing bell, those are rebalancing bars. And then into the close, we expect volume to pick up a little bit. That's very normal. But I typically ignore the bars straddling the closing bell unless there's tremendous movement involved in both of those bars. But, most of the time, they're just high volume rebalancing bars with a lot of both buying and selling going on. So on most days, it's usually safe to kind of move past those, or if not ignore them, unless there's an obvious reason to look deeper. Okay, so let's move on. Let's take a look at the psychological self-fulfilling prophecy levels here on SPY as we head into tomorrow. Now, we're starting here on the very simple 30-minute chart. These are the levels that most people, most institutions, a lot of money, will say that, is paying attention to So we need to as well. I'm only interested in what has the most eyeballs. Now you can see here, guys, yesterday, remember, we talked about that white line, that 50-period moving average was struggling to hold, and we actually gave it up yesterday, or more so made a more decisive move to the downside compared to the day prior where we were kind of hovering around it. Now today, guys, we kind of ripped off the open, came back, tested it a couple of times here. It was a little bit sloppy through the midday, and then we saw what, we're kind of always talking about, a slightly elevated volume rip to the upside away from that level. That's a wonderful hold. The bulls, that's a pretty much, it could have been a little cleaner. Nothing's ever going to be perfect hardly, but this was a really nice hold if you're a bull, at least here on the 30-minute chart. So bulls, what I'd really be watching for here tomorrow, I want to see that 50 period get upside as quickly as possible, get some feet up underneath the move, get that psychological level higher, as high as possible, close to the newer price of the ETF now. Any downside test of that, obviously I'd like to see that hold as support on high volume like we saw today. Bears getting beneath that and reclaiming that 50 period as resistance. That would be a beautiful thing. That could set you bears up for a near-term downside test of the 200 period, that gray line. Now, let's look at the 4-hour chart here and see what's going on. You can see here that, we're a little bit away from an actual test of the nearest level that's specific to the 4-hour, that 50 period. About 1.2% away. But what we've been talking about a lot is bulls seeing this 50 period get up, like we just talked about on the 30-minute, getting some more feet, right? Like an additional psychological barrier back to the downside up underneath the current move, the price of the ETF, that now that it's higher, right? You got to drag it up with the price. So bulls just seeing that 50 period get dragged up as quickly as possible, reclaiming whole dollars along the way, kind of stair-stepping upside, that, in terms of the psychological level itself, not necessarily the price of the ETF, but stair-stepping that 50 period higher and higher here on the 4-hour. And in doing so, every $5 increment that it can reclaim is a little bit more meaningful, in my opinion. So 520 is kind of that next area to look for. But it's the 4-hour, right? It moves a little more slowly. Any downside test, of course, you want to see that hold as support. Bears, ideally not reclaiming 520, and ideally getting below the 50 period here on the 4-hour, reclaiming that as resistance and starting to flatten it out rather than this quick ascending position that we're seeing right now. That would be more ideal for you bears. All right, now the daily chart, the most important chart of all. Listen, guys, the daily is really simple here on SPY. If we look, we're looking at nearly 2% to retest that 50-day. But you know what the real story here is on the daily on SPY? We're currently in a channel between 520 and 525. 525, of course, implies a new all-time high. So there's that as well. Bulls, this is really the story for bulls. Hold 520 to the downside, break and hold 525, get above it, is what I mean. That would be beautiful. Not only are you reclaiming a $5 increment, it's a new all-time high, right? How do you encourage as many of your peers, as many other bulls as possible? Well, you break all-time highs. That's a good way to do that. Bears, also incredibly, equally simple. Hold off a new all-time high, meaning not even testing 525. And ideally getting below 520 would be a good way to attempt to delay things and set yourselves up for a near-term test of the 50-day, that white line, all right? Implied volatility. Down a little bit today, from yesterday to today, but still, compared to the last 3 months, very low. Okay, so if you're buying options, you're paying very little Vega premium, comparatively speaking, up front, which is a good thing right now. If we were to see IV, if you buy when Vega is low, your IV is low, therefore the Vega value in your contracts is low, you're not paying up for that. And then IV were to rise, if you're also directionally correct in your bet, well, that's kind of like a double whammy, right? That's the idea with options, is to position yourself to benefit from more than one factor. Okay, that's how you really become, an options trader with edge, with an advantage there. Now, SPY, we of course have daily expiration, so the expected move for tomorrow, this is important because we have news, CPI day. So the next expiration, May 15th, the expected move by tomorrow's close, compared to today's close, is plus or minus $4.38 per share. Okay, that's the expected volatility. And now you're thinking, well, what about directional bias? Well, let's look at volume. Over 6 million contracts traded today, 2.72 million calls, 3.54 million puts. Bearish bias here heading into tomorrow, but if we break that down by the short-term speculators, that 0 to 20 delta range is a good way to do that. 851,000 calls, 1.61 million puts. Bearish bias out of the short-term speculators here heading into CPI, as well as the overall ratio. Listen, guys, if you get value out of these daily SPY uploads, especially on the night before news, please leave a like on the video and then get out of here and enjoy your day. That's all I ask. I greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next one.